In this video, I'm going to explain to you why I don't know if Gen Con is worth it anymore. To me. So, Gen Con 50 is in the books. I was there. I wasn't there last year. It was my first miss in a while, but I just decided not to go. But this year, 50th anniversary, I kind of had to, and, so I did. I just don't know if it's worth it to me anymore to go. I'll explain why. So Gen Con, as I've mentioned many times before, is a big convention here in America. It's the largest gaming convention in America, and it's not just wargaming, which is usually what I talk about here. It's all kinds of tabletop gaming, role-playing games, collectible card games, board games, and war games. Now, in that little situation there, I did put war games at the end, and that's with good reason. I think that, frankly, there's far less wargaming stuff going on at Gen Con than I would personally like, and that's one of the several reasons why I'm just not sure that I'm going to be going too much anymore. There's a lot of board gaming, tons and tons and tons of board gaming, which is great. Obviously, it's probably the biggest portion of the tabletop gaming industry. And there's a lot of RPG stuff. There's a humongous room upstairs that is just all Pathfinder. It is bigger than a football field. Speaking of football field, this year Gen Con expanded onto the field that the Indianapolis Colts play on. It is the field that was, I believe, the Super Bowl like 4 years ago, something like that. So it's, they've taken up a lot of space. They've completely used all the parts of the convention center and now started moving into the Lucas Oil Stadium where the Colts play, plus into a whole bunch of the hotels that are all like maybe, right across the street and all that stuff. It's gotten humongous. And that's also part of the problem. Housing is super difficult unless you want to stay outside of town or way out by the airport and either come in and try to find a place to park every day, which is super expensive, or potentially, I guess, take an Uber in every day, super expensive. If you want to try to get a hotel even vaguely downtown, really expensive. $250 a night is a steal if you can find a room that cheap. So if you want to go as a wargamer, as I am, and again, all of this, your mileage may vary, you're different than me, but for me, as a person who is predominantly just a wargamer, I'm finding that Gen Con's not that great. Value for money is a big deal. I don't know how much the actual 4-day pass costs because I didn't buy one this year because I'm fancy and I have a press pass. But I've heard it's about $100 or $110. So that's pretty expensive there. Then you need a hotel. Like I said, $250 is cheap if you can find one. And then, if you have to park, go through all that stuff, the parking, all that jazz. There's a lot of stuff that you may have to do just so that you can go and see, Games Workshop, which you can see at Adepticon or the Nova Open, which is happening right now as I film this, or at the Las Vegas Open, which is coming up in January. You can see Cool Mini or Not, which you can also see at a lot of other conventions. You can see, there's not a lot of miniature companies that go. The biggest ones do, but the small ones, the ones that you see at the smaller cool conventions, in my opinion, like Adepticon, you don't see them at Gen Con because they can't afford a booth. Not only is it expensive for you or me as an attendee to go, it's really expensive as a company that's trying to actually sell things to the public. Now, as I've said, if you are more than a wargamer, let's say you're into war games, but you're also into board games, well, at that point then it becomes a different story because, like I said, humongous amounts of board gaming going on there. All the new stuff comes out. You can get a lot of the stuff before it hits the stores if you're into that. You can get demos of stuff that's coming down the road, all this kind of stuff. So if you're into something more than just wargaming, but it's still tabletop gaming, or even stuff like cosplay or anime, then it makes a lot more sense because now you're not just trying to, dig through all of the krill to find the spicy shrimp. I'm not a whale. I don't know what whales eat and how they do, but you see what I'm saying. You're digging through a lot of stuff that's not what you're looking for when you're at Gen Con if you're only looking for wargaming. And to me, that's a problem. Does that mean that you should never, ever go to Gen Con, even if you're just completely strict, orthodox wargame? No, if you can pull it off, if you can find someone or a bunch of someones who you can room with to, defray the cost of the hotel, okay. Then, I think everybody should try, if they can, to make a pilgrimage once, though it is getting more and more difficult. This year, they sold out of badges. The attendees you didn't get that many more attendees. They were still right around 60,000, which is a lot, but it's the same number roughly that they've had for the last 3 years. I think the reason they sold out badges this year is because they knew that they were already with pre-sales at a certain number. And they also know how many people who just come from the surrounding areas at the last minute on a whim and buy tickets. So they knew if they were already creeping up to 60,000 in pre-sales, if they left open sales Thursday, Friday, Saturday, people would come from miles around and then they would be at 75 maybe, or who knows, I don't know what the number would be, but it would probably be more than they could handle. So the reason that they decided this year, I think, to shut it down is because I think 60,000 is right around how much they can actually handle at Gen Con. I could be wrong, but between the housing and the restaurants and all that kind of stuff, I think that's the big number. And so you are literally playing a lottery if you want to be able to go in and get into Gen Con, because just to get housing, you have to enter the housing lottery, which is a pain. So you're hearing me and you're saying, okay, Adam, so you're saying I shouldn't go to Gen Con. And I'm kind of saying that. Only, like I said, if you are just straight super interested in wargaming, then fine. Yeah, I don't know that I would do it. What I would tell you to do instead is go to Adepticon, which will be considerably cheaper. Go to the Las Vegas Open, also probably considerably cheaper, unless you gamble a bunch, then your mileage may vary as well. Nova Open in the DC area, also probably a lot cheaper. All those events are very, very Wargamer-centric, and you can go there and just be immersed in wargaming. There's seminars, classes to take, that kind of stuff. There's demos, there's vendors at all of these conventions now. Adepticon's always had vendors, but the other ones, LVO, Nova, were predominantly started really as tournaments. Although, to be fair, 15 years ago or whatever, that's how Adepticon started. It was just basically a 40K tournament, and it's grown. And these two other conventions now are also growing. So you've got one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast, Adepticon in the middle. You've got your choice. I'm telling you, if you're a wargamer, think about going to one of those. But, like I said, if you are a wargamer, but you also love CCGs, or you're a wargamer, but you also love board games or RPGs, then think about Gen Con, because you've got, two different pools you can sort of dip into. All this being said, I mean, it wasn't all bad. Obviously, I bought my third Fez, and that's kind of hard to do at other conventions. I wish the Fez people would come to Adepticon. I would probably have far more than 3 Fezes at this point. But, and there's all the people you can see and the people you can meet and all the biggest designers and things like that. If you want to talk to them directly, they have a tendency to go to Gen Con. But if you are, like me, just really interested in wargaming, you may want to take a look at some of the other 3 big conventions in America that are just wargaming related. And if you only have to choose one, I'm going to tell you probably Adepticon.